Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Breaker 19, everybody. Is it Friday? Is it time to go home yet? I think I've just about had enough of podcasting this week. Anyway, I'm very happy to bring you part 5 in my National Truck Driver Appreciation Week series. Today, I am joined by Mr. Todd Dills and Mr. Matt Cole of Overdrive Magazine. Back in the day, you would have seen their product at every truck stop across the land. And way back in the day, everybody would have picked it up because they had some pretty good-looking girls on the front of the magazine in front of some mostly good-looking trucks. Anyway, Matt and Todd joined me to discuss a recent series they had in Overdrive Online, discussing all of the different surveillance technology that keeps getting imposed on us or is offered by the market for whatever reason. And we sort of had a wide-ranging discussion about that and the trucking industry in general, freight brokers, you name it. We had a really nice chat, and I'm hoping this is a good cap off to the week. I want to thank y'all for listening to all 5 episodes. Again, this show is a gift to my fellow drivers, and what better way to show yet more appreciation for y'all than having this awesome week where I just drop 5 episodes in a row to you. I hope you're able to get through it all. Really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it enough that you sent it to your fellow drivers, friends, family, whoever's in the trucking business. I really appreciate your help with spreading the word around. Word of mouth is the best advertising, and I thank you in advance for your efforts at spreading the show. All right, well, without any further delay, let's get to Matt Cole and Todd Dills of Overdrive Online. G'day, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. Today on the show, you're going to hear the voices of 2 fine gentlemen who I've been hoping to get on the show now for a long time. Both of them are writers and managers, I guess, with Overdrive Magazine, which I believe is the oldest and longest serving trucking magazine in the United States. Maybe I'm incorrect about that, but anyways, please welcome to the show Mr. Todd Dills and Mr. Matt Cole.
Thank you, Gord.
Thanks, Gord.
Yeah, it's Todd. I will correct you on that. Overdrive is not the longest running and oldest, but when it comes to small business trucking, maybe it is. It was founded in the early '60s. And founded as a publication for owner operators, and from there, it was kind of became a sort of a cultural phenomenon to an extent in the 1970s, when trucking was sort of big in popular culture, and the founder of Overdrive had he didn't have entirely to do with that. It wasn't as a result of his efforts necessarily that happened, but he definitely had some influence on it with some of the things that he was doing back in those days. And
what was this gentleman's name?
Mike Parkhurst. A lot of owner operators have been around a long time. Will remember him well, and he sold the magazine in the mid to late '80s to the folks that own it now, which is Randall Riley. And back then, I think it was just Randall Publishing. It became Randall Riley maybe in the early 2000s. Before I started on as an editor in 2006, and have been here ever since. And Matt, when did you come on exactly? Remind me.
April 2015 was when I started.
Okay.
Right, and
you're his
But both of you gentlemen had a previous background in writing or journalism elsewhere before coming to Overdrive, correct?
Yeah, in my case, I had done when I was I went to college for English and did some grad work, creative writing, and I worked for a newspaper in Chicago for immediately before starting to work for Overdrive in 2006. And that was basically the extent of my journalism experience. I had been there for 3 or 4 years, and I've done some other things with some other smaller publications that were more creative writing focused, but took to the journalism thing and followed it here, and really found I think I found a place that I'd call home here, and in the kind of trucking world. It's been a great experience all around for me over the last, golly, it's been what how do I'm trying to do the math here. 17 years? Could it possibly have been 17 years for it? It's been 17 years. Anyways, Matt, Matt, your experience not is not only professional when it comes to journalism, but you grew up with trucking, unlike me, which I think is important to note here, Matt.
Yeah, I did. My dad was a truck driver my whole life. He just retired here in the last couple of months. So I kind of grew up around the industry a little bit, and he never did own his own equipment, but I still got to see firsthand what it was like to to be a truck driver out there. And I went to college and got a journalism degree, and I worked in at a small community newspaper here in West Central Alabama for a few years, and then in 2015 joined the Overdrive team and haven't looked back.
Yeah, my father was a trucker, still is still on the road in a kind of full time, part time capacity, semi retired. I mean, he's 68,
Yeah.
but he's still fairly spry, still chaining down loads and tarping loads and pulling flatbed and oversized and heavy equipment. So he's still giving her. My both my uncles were truckers. My grandpa was a trucker. Drove a tank
Oh,
across Europe in a Canadian uniform. So long history
Wow.
there. So
oh. I had s-
This Parkhurst fellow that started Overdrive, was he a trucker at any point?
Oh yeah. He started the magazine. I think he was in his late 20s, but he had been an owner operator, prior to doing this, and it was in '61 when the first issue came out. So it's we just celebrated our actual 60th anniversary a couple of years back now, and kind of delved back into some of the old stories. And you can find that at the site under the trucking history tag, I think. Overdriveonline.com/trucking hyphen history is where a lot of that stuff is. And it's just kind of fun to track back through some of it. We pulled out a lot of the old print issues and just resurfaced some stories that were notable for various reasons, and pretty fun stuff. But yeah, Parkhurst, he had been an owner operator, and he came to understand the issues at that time. A lot of the sort of barriers to small business entry into trucking that existed at the time. He was a big advocate of sort of loosening up the barriers to entry that we got in deregulation. That, of course, had some. There's a lot more to that than the kind of things that he was advocating ultimately, and it led to a lot of changes and a lot of difficulty for a lot of trucking companies at that time. But it also did open up opportunity for a lot of 1-2 truck entrepreneurs that went on to build pretty sizable fleets and or just build a career behind the wheel and or in the office of small trucking companies. So, but definitely, that of course in history is a total double-edged sword sort of moment for sure. And I don't know exactly. It may have been part of the ultimate reason why the difficulty in trucking after that time that he ended up selling the publication. Thereafter, when Overdrive came under Randall Riley, things just continued, and the focus was on, and still continues to be to this day, business for owner operators, small fleets. It's expanded in some ways over the years, from definitely from print to digital. I mean, that's been huge, at least in the past 10 15 years time that I've been here. It's gone from when I first came, it was pretty much, there was a website associated with it, but it was pretty well solely a print magazine in 2006 when I came in. And since then, it's gone entirely digital. Our last print publication was in 2020, I think, right, Matt?
Yeah,
December
December
of 2020
was the last one.
Yeah.
And
Which is bittersweet in some ways, but hey, here's what it is.
well, I know I was bugging you in an email a little while ago about the great aesthetics that Mr. Parkhurst employed. I don't know if it was done on purpose or to help sell his magazine, but he had fine taste in both trucks and the female form, and the cover issues of all those old Overdrive magazines. I mean, if I could get my hands on a box of them, I would. I may sacrifice my children's educational fund to acquire them. One of the little things I used to do on Twitter, just as a meme format, something fun to do before they kick me off again. Elon Musk, if you're listening, yeah, I would like to speak with a human about that. Anyway, I used to do this thing called Friday After Work Road Soda, and I would find just pictures of girls off the internet that were featuring big rigs in the back, many of which were Overdrive magazine covers from back in the day. Every Friday, somewhere around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'll just say some random thing, and all you hardworking truckers and other members of the working class out there have earned your after work road soda. And then that was no more. Anyways, here we are.
Yeah, those covers those covers that you're talking about there, they always featured a truck that was featured in the magazine usually, but next to it, he would bring in various and sundry models from that time in the 70s, and pretty photos, and there of course back in the 70s there were a good number of female drivers out there, but there weren't a whole lot of them. So yeah, he was definitely catering to the men on the road, and he did back in those days still feature a lot of female owner operators as well, because some instances that I've found back in the past in the comments section, I mean the letters to the editors sections where the female drivers were asking for female owner operators at Reddit were asking for a little bit of a different approach to the cover for them, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was that fell by the wayside. I think by the 80s he had kind of stopped doing that. We actually did some retro covers that were of that sort of type for a very brief period around the 50th anniversary, I think, in 2011. And that was just kind of sort of a fun thing that we did, and I think there were some female owner operators associated with that as well. But it's a glamour shot approach to a trucking magazine cover, but it was just a one or two off back then. We haven't taken that approach. We never took that approach with the covers really again. Get beyond the your basic sort of profile of business owner shot. I don't know. I think he was clearly he was having fun with it, I guess, and that's good. We try to have fun with it in other ways as well. So
speaking of the market for Overdrive Magazine, you mentioned it's heavily owner operators and small business, small fleet owners. Does that remain so in 2023?
Yeah, I would say so. There's a fair number of company drivers and other trucking folks mixed into that. Everybody wants to understand each other in this kind of business. So owner operators read the fleet publications, and they read the owner operator publications, and brokers read the owner operator publications, and owner operators read the broker publication. So it's small trucking business focus intended for the owner operator and small fleet owner. But Red, I think the last time we did a real close look at that, or one of the survey we're going to talk about that we conducted, that was taken by maybe somewhere in the area of 60% owner operators, about 10 of them with another 10% with multiple trucks, and maybe 20 to 25% somewhere in there company drivers. So there's some in there for sure.
So Mr. Cole, you said you joined in 2015?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Right. And your family was involved in the trucking business? And
Yeah, a little
so,
bit. Like I said, my dad was a company driver all through my time growing up, and by the time I hit 9 or 10 years old, I spent several summers out on the road with him, so I got to see kind of firsthand what it's like to be a truck driver. And two of my uncles were truck drivers as well, locally around the Atlanta area. So that's kind of the gist of it.
so that experience of your family in the business and of those times out on the road informs your approach to writing about it then?
Absolutely. I feel like I can, and it's been a while since I was on the road with him, but at least having that experience, I can sort of, understand what truck drivers are going through, and I feel like that brings an extra layer of, I don't know if authenticity is the right word, but just an extra layer of experience I can bring to the table for Overdrive.
I've been following Overdrive for quite a while now myself. I mean, I've been trucking for 26 years. Not completely 100%. I've taken a couple of breaks here and there to swing a hammer and help people with other types of projects. Done a lot of international traveling. One of the things I find about Overdrive is that you guys always try and sort of, I don't want to say stand up for the little guy, but I don't get the feeling that you're doing any sopping to big fleets. There's a trucking magazine in Canada who I don't understand how they do business, because everything seems to be like focused on fleet owners, even though they like distributed it at truck stops. Yeah, a lot of their stuff seemed to be pro everything that truck drivers actually hated, and I kind of gave up following those guys. They shall remain nameless. Speaking of Canada and truck stops, you guys, there used to be a somewhat famous kind of classic rock band back in the 70s and 80s called Bachman Turner Overdrive. And the Overdrive part came from Randy Bachman, who's this kind of semi-famous Canadian musician, sitting at the Husky truck stop in Windsor, Ontario, and saw a copy of Overdrive Magazine, and then thus the name of the band was born.
Yeah, there's a story about that written by the great former editor of ours, Mr. Max Heine, who he retired just a couple of years ago. But we resurfaced some of that story recently when I think was it Randy that passed away?
I think it
recently?
or
was it
Robbie.
one of the other?
I think it was Robbie that passed away in January, and then
yeah,
another member passed away in May, I want to say.
Yeah.
So we've had to resurface that one a couple of times this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I think maybe that was part Gord, either of the 50th or 60th anniversary of Overdrive, when I think Max maybe knew about that already, but we definitely found some old coverage of the band in one of the 70s, I believe, issues. I can't remember exactly, but
I want to say the original story was written in like 75.
Okay. But yeah, it was sort of a little interview with one of the members of Bachman Turner Overdrive. Kind of cool.
You guys did this series recently, which I guess was based on a survey of your readership and their experience, reactions, and opinions on all of this various technology, which are now sort of a permanent fixture of life in trucks and on the road for the vast majority of truckers. So, sort of what inspired you guys to take this survey? What did you find from it? And have you pulled any sort of deeper observations? I mean, as part of that, you guys also interviewed Karen Levy, someone whose book I wrote a review on and I've also had on my show. Yep. And her sort of thesis dissertation, as it were, on what the effects of all this stuff is on sort of drivers as employees and what that sort of means for the rest of the working class. I mean, some of the equipment you guys talk about is sort of used voluntarily. It's not all the mandated stuff, but right. It's sort of interesting. It would be interesting to me and maybe my listeners what you guys have gleaned from this survey, even in a sort of subtextual manner.
The reason we, the instigating reason that we decided to go this route and put this survey out to the readership was Karen Levy's book. In fact, we got wind of it probably about the time it came out, and reading it, I was noticing a lot of kind of familiarity with the story that she was telling. Obviously, we told a lot of that story. The long story about the ELD mandate coming into being, and the sort of the trucking world's reaction to it, and attempts to, I don't know, reconcile itself with it, and all the opposition to it as well. So it's a familiar story in a lot of ways, but more broadly, since it had come into play, I mean, one of the things that we were sort of acutely aware of is that our audience, owner operators and small fleet owners, the majority of them independent of any larger carrier, they were coming under the technological umbrella in ways that they were forced into it newly by the ELD mandate, later than a lot of the other leased owner operators leased to larger carriers who already have all this familiarity with how a lot of these systems interact with their trucks, because the carriers are already requiring the various kind of fleet management systems that they had in place for comms and everything else, the Qualcomms and what have you. With these guys with our audience, being kind of last of that table and kind of being forced under that umbrella at one fell swoop, we hadn't really gone back and kind of taken an accounting of how folks, what kind of actual utility and or lack of benefit anybody was really seeing around them. Maybe we knew some of the opinions and the realities that folks share with us, but we didn't really have a way to kind of quantify any of that. So we broke up a series of questions into a number of different technologies that you can characterize as having some kind of a quote unquote surveillance capability, whether they are location tracking, they have location monitoring technology within them, and that goes as far as from basic cell phone to the ubiquitous smartphones that pretty much everybody's got anymore, to even GPS devices and camera systems, and to more sophisticated non-ELD or ELD adjacent telematics systems, whether in the cab or in the trailer. Anyway, we asked everybody to rate the costs of these of each category and the benefits, in both on a 1 to 10 scale. So we could basically create a ratio between benefits and costs, where we kind of numerically rank, like if and we asked everybody to only do that if they're actually using these things. So you kind of get a sense there of how folks, a broad average of how people that use these technologies really feel about them. Half of them rank a little higher on the benefits side of things: GPS devices, cell phones, smartphones, and dash cams that face the road. And then the other four were all on the negative side, more costly than beneficial: ELDs, in-cab telematics, trailer telematics, and of course the the sort of most hated thing out there, I believe, is the way that our colleague Alex Lockheed put it in one of the first pieces of this. The in-cab camera that's staring at you down the road. But anyway, that one did not rate very highly on the scale here.
I'm kind of surprised that one of the ones that surprised me was the trailer telematics not being seen as useful, because when I was reading the article, having all that of information about your refrigeration system available instantly and at very low cost to satisfy your clients about the temperature of their loads and how they've been taken care of, I would have thought that would have been a big plus.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember exactly where it fell, but I think it was pretty close to that sort of neutral dividing line. But also a caveat to all this is that because we asked the question the way that we did, some of these technologies have very few inputs in the survey. So the reliability of that rating is not 100%. It's just like the trailer telematics, beyond whatever folks are getting from systems that are connected to their ELDs, for instance. There's probably not a lot of our audience that is actually using that. You know what I mean? They don't have a system that's not like something that's integrated with whatever they're using for their ELD system. So they wouldn't even have mentioned that, even though they're probably getting some benefit out of those trailer telematics. I mean, actually, that story, the story that we wrote, that's part of this package, and there's like 9 pieces of it, I think. The story that we wrote about telematics, I think, has some of the more I don't know, some of the more encouraging examples of folks getting utility from these devices. In both cases, it's interesting. We have a small fleet championship that we do every year, and both of our winners of that, one in a smaller category, 3 to 10 trucks, and the other in the 10 to 30 truck category. Both of them, just by virtue of their different operations, neither of them use ELDs, but both of them do use telematics. One of them is a short haul local oil and gas guy, and the other winner is a gentleman is invested entirely in glider kits and doesn't use ELDs, but does use trailer trackers, just like you said. Gets a lot of benefit from it, and anyway, by doing this, it just allowed us to then go out to the readership, do a lot of research, do a lot of reporting, just talk to as many people as we could, and kind of chart the what the evolution of this has been for folks over the past 4 and more years as the LD mandate came into play, and and then kind of also give some idea about where things are headed next, and where they might be headed, and what things our regulatory structures are talking about, some of this ever increasingly advanced monitoring and sensoring technologies might be going, and it kind of ends on this this odd note about this push for more automation of the inspection process at roadside. It's a long way from prime time, but
on the automation of inspections, which I think is an interesting question. Has anyone spoken with maybe you did, Mr. Cole, state DOT inspectors, and like what they think about this? I mean, one of the sort of undercurrents in trucking now is, there's a lot of hype and inevitability in the marketing around autonomous vehicles. Most of us I would think, are fairly skeptical of that, or at least the timelines they're talking about. And I wonder, if you're a DOT inspector guy, which is, I wouldn't say necessarily a cushy job, but it is a government job. Do you want that being, supplanted or replaced by a camera that's just scanning every truck going by? Did you talk to any of these folks, Mr. Cole?
I think our colleague Alex Lucky was probably the one that talked to the DOT guys more than I did, but I definitely think it's a concern out there. I think, like all of us, kind of in a wait and see approach. There are some states that are starting to embrace at least the early stages of this technology, and
we've all got. I mean, most. I don't know if I can say most, but a lot of states have already have some elements of this in place. The license plate reading cameras that feed that information into, and the DOT number reading cameras that feed that information into the computer systems, to where the officer knows what kind of CSA safety measurement system score you have in all the different categories before you even get to the weight the weight scale, right? So I mean, a lot of this kind of stuff is sort of in place, but it's screening. It's not actually conducting an inspection as you roll by, like you said.
So
a lot of these officers will tell you, though, like, they're quick to tell you, like, there's no way we're going to do all of this with sensors. And I mean, it's just like there's so much about it that cannot possibly be done without human eyes on it, an inspection with it, So
Yeah,
the same thing we say about the trucking itself, right? Like it's just I think there's a lot of
there's too much reality to interact with that can't just be sort of censored or
yeah
roboted away. So on the
yeah
note
yeah
about these license plate reading cameras, as you guys know, I have a big fetish for Australia. I've been there several times. One of my favorite souvenirs is this set of road train signs I brought home with me.
cool.
And the state of New South Wales in Australia, as far as I know, is one of the first sort of the Anglosphere countries to employ these types of cameras. They started this thing in the 1990s called Safety Cam. And on all of the major roads coming in and out of New South Wales and then throughout the rest of the state, they have these overhead cameras that were at the time, just about as high tech as they are now. They super high resolution, read the number plate. Some drivers took to making illicit hand gestures. Team operations where the driver in the passenger seat would pull their pants down. They could zoom in. If you left your logbook on the dashboard of the truck, they could zoom in and see the name printed on it. They were real high tech stuff. And the information recorded was made available to the rest of that network instantly. And at one point, they started issuing speeding fines based on kilometer an hour averaging. So if you went between 2 points and you were doing over 100 kilometers an hour, they just mailed you a speeding ticket. Like no questions asked, you're guilty. Right. So that
I think in the United States, like that right now, it cannot be done in that exact way. I don't think, but I know that toll systems will send you a bill for you paying the toll by mail. I mean, that's just like that's happening for sure.
Yeah, Australia is much bigger on their nanny state than the U.S. is.
Yeah.
We have a few more protections here than the Australians do, fortunately. But despite their much more efficient way of moving things via road. So, and I wanted to ask about this other article that Alex did. I just have it brought up here. Hold on. From October of last year. ELDs and highway safety crashes, injuries, and fatalities rise post mandate.
That's Matt. Yeah, that's Matt's story. You said Alex, but you meant Matt.
Matt, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got confused
with
Mr. Lockie, who I met in person at Matt's.
Yes.
There you go.
So that story on ELDs. So you've been following a lot of the statistics and sort of downstream effects of the ELD mandate, Mr. Cole, and maybe you could tell us more about what you found, how you found it. And you had an interview with Robin Hutchinson, who's the current head of the FMCSA. Maybe you could tell us something about that.
Sure. So we pulled some data. We have a sister company called RigDig, and they track. Todd can kind of give some more information on what they do, but they keep track of a lot of CSA data and things like that on trucking companies. And we approached them to kind of pull together some information for us regarding crashes and fatalities, injuries during the span prior to 3 or 4 years prior to the ELD mandate, and then the 3 or 4 years post the mandate, and kind of just compared those. And there's a few different factors at play, but the numbers do bear out that there were more more crashes, more injuries, more fatalities after the ELD took effect than there were in the years prior.
Reporting around it all just then becomes like, okay, well, and Matt did a great job of it, just kind of engaging the sort of the regulators on it and the drivers. Like, is that just is that just correlation, or is this the cause of it? And we don't really come down on a conclusion necessarily there, but there's a lot to consider, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, traffic volumes were up, in 2018, 2019, not 2020, but 2021, compared to the years prior. There are more four-wheelers on the road, more trucks on the road. So that kind of
tried to account for some of that, but the way we did it, Gord, is I mean, there's limitations to it for sure. We're not using, there's not any real great reliable counts of the number of trucks that are out there, right? And there's not a real great reliability around the counts of miles that people that are driven. So what we use were, the self-reported miles in the federal system that carriers fill out with their authority. So, I mean, that's a way of doing it, but is it? There's no 100% accuracy here, but I think on the broad trend of things, crashes prior to the mandate were, once the mandate goes into effect, the trend is up and not down, despite what the mandate was at least expressly intended to do, which is
Right.
make this a safer place to work out here on the highways, which arguably, but on the face of it, that's pretty much been a failure.
Well, one of my projects, and I'm sure this comes through in my writing, such that you guys might open all the emails you get from me and my Substack, is that, trucking, although, a truck is a piece of technology, all of this extra
Yep.
electronic surveillance technology, but at the end of the day, there's a guy or a gal driving the truck, and they're interacting with guys and girls driving cars out on the road, other trucks, four-legged creatures, kangaroos, cows, whatever. But like at root of all of this, there's humans.
Yep.
And I get the sense, like, having grown up in the sort of old ways, right? Because I'm 44. When I started trucking when I was 18, it was still maps and phone calls and CB radios and getting directions from other drivers, calling your customer, and a couple of years into that, we started using Microsoft Streets and Trips. And, I've never had a GPS like mapping system in a truck ever. I've just never used one. And, so a lot of this stuff is, even at my sort of youthful, tender age, is somewhat alien to me. And the sort of inclination of our managerial classes to see technology as a panacea solution to everything. I see that it's got this major blind spot in that it's not considering the human element. So in this story that Matt did, and, Robin Hutchinson says, the appropriate number of accidents and fatalities is 0. Okay, good. There are other ways that we can manage this that will get the numbers that we will eventually get, which are probably not going to be 0, but we can get much closer to 0 by doing things that are not tech oriented. Right? There are policy solutions which will make people into better drivers and also take the bad drivers off the road faster, but they do not involve technology. They involve training. They involve barriers to entry. And I know you guys were a magazine started being against those things. I was at one time too, and then I grew up. So, like, again, I'm going to bring Australia and New Zealand back into the mix. They have graduated truck licensing. This is going to sound horrifying.
I think there's a lot of favor. I think there's a lot of favor for that out there, though. Here, in fact, tell me how they do it, though, exactly, Gore, because I can't remember it.
So in Australia, there's like 6 different truck licenses, or maybe 5.
Okay,
and they involve the weights of what they call a rigid or a straight truck. And then there's an HC heavy combination, which is a truck and one trailer, so like a semi. And then you have a multi combination, which is B trains and road trains.
And at each step, there's probably required training and just
it's time, right? So like in order to get a rigid license, you must be 18. You must have had a car license, a full car license, because they also have graduated car licensing for 1 year. Right. So like the idea is that you run around town in a dump truck or a freight delivery van or doing something with a straight job for 1 year before you're allowed to step foot in an 18-wheeled semi and then get cut loose on the road. And we have this problem in North America with sort of very loose CDL mills. And like I say, this is a human thing. Like, no matter how many doodads you put in the truck, ELDs, driver facing cameras, all of this stuff, as your guys' research bears out, it's not really doing anything to solve any safety issues.
Right.
What would is reforming the licensing system and also like actually enforcing existing rules. I
Yeah, I
remember.
mean, I think that right there is some of the most low-hanging fruit that we have, right? Particularly as it relates to just the on the not just the general motoring public, but definitely the general motoring public. And I just think that the speeding problem is huge these days, and it just makes the whole experience over the road a very stressful one for a lot of truck drivers, no doubt.
Right. And so, yeah, and this applies to car drivers too. I'm not just trying to
Yeah,
attack our
yeah,
own here. But I mean,
totally.
the inclination to technology as a regulatory solution, it goes back. So a big issue in trucking right now, and with, the ceaseless demands to regulate further, is the FMCSA is considering imposing a speed limiter mandate. As you know, that mandate was already implemented in Canada back in the mid 2000s in the provinces of Ontario and Quebec.
Yeah,
And I was there when that was happening and watching the discussion before it was implemented. And one of the interesting things that was said by both the Ontario Provincial Police and the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario was, and this was by their spokespeople, we do not want to expend officer resources pulling trucks over on the side of the road. It's
yeah.
unsafe
The
and
whole,
it's
you know,
unnecessary, and we just don't want to do it. They basically said they were using an excuse to say
yeah,
we
but
do not want to do the job of enforcement, which is what
yeah,
we pay them to do.
yeah.
Right.
The speed limiter then just becomes a device of convenience for law enforcement officers, and a lot of that same stuff can be said for the kinds of like the ELD itself, replacing paper logs and making data transmission, giving over the job of the officer of verifying a logbook to a machine, and just creating other problems. But I think it was the Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association's comment on this. The White House put out a notice requesting comment on automated surveillance, right in the middle of us working on this state of surveillance package of stories, which I was, it just kind of fell into our lap. We actually didn't hear about it until after it had been out for a little bit. But
It was pretty late
OIDA
in the process.
OIDA had commented on it, and that was one of the things they said about they had to say about the idea of automating inspections was, there doesn't, like, the way this is being talked about, it just seems like it's just a convenience tool for law enforcement. If it has no safety benefit, like this is, it's not worth not worth pursuing. We need to have robust law enforcement that knows what they're doing, and just turning things over to computers is not going to help anybody.
Right.
uh,
Another
yeah,
another human
and it
solution.
tramples on privacy too.
Yeah,
That was the
yeah.
other.
That's also another
Yeah,
consideration.
yeah,
Another human or maybe economic solution that's often discussed, and I'd like to get your guys' take
sure.
on this because again, Overdrive represents owner operators and small business people who bristle at the idea of further economic interference from the government, which is not without merit. It's a very
Sure.
it's a good concern to have, but the idea of you know either paying drivers by the hour across the board mandated, and or
Right.
removing the exemption in the sort of Federal Labor
Yeah.
Standards Act, Fair Labor Standards Act of
For
1998.
overtime. Yeah. Yep.
And I as part of like my life experience traveling around the world and having driven truck in other countries, and then I start this show. I've had a guy from the UK on my show. I talked to this
Yep.
Canadian dude who spent some time trucking in Europe. And, both of them said to me that like trucking in Europe and trucking here is like night and day different on the road with people's behavior because nobody's in a hurry. The trucks, A, they're
Right.
governed, but B, like they don't see the aggressive driving because everyone's getting paid by the hour, like
Right.
across
Right.
the board.
Right.
Yep.
I mean,
So
it seems like intuitive and totally it makes total sense that, yeah, if you're getting paid by the hour, you're not going to get in a hurry nearly as often. You're not going to feel the time crunch as much because there's an incentive to just get there as slow as you can, right? But well, some incentive anyway. I mean, there's all kinds of. It's not the only incentive when it comes to just being on time and yada yada. But and I don't know what you think, Matt, but I know among overdrive readers there is a lot of support for doing away with the overtime exemption, which it could result in just a broader sort of profusion of an hourly model.
what about the notion
For
of
employee drivers, it would, and then that could just raise the floor,
right?
and which could then, owner operators hope that the people that favor this and people that argue for it argue that by raising the floor, it has a ripple effect on rates to everyone basically, and also, I mean, it could have inflationary impacts in the wider economy to an extent, but I don't imagine it would be a whole lot. I think most I don't know. I would suspect that there is probably a lot of overtime to be had by company drivers working today, just knowing the hours that a lot of folks are working. But at the same time, I'm not 100% sure that a large majority of them aren't already being compensated to that level, just in a different way. But it's totally interesting. In terms of the hour, like an hourly mandate, I just don't know. That'd be a huge shock to the system. But I mean, it could be a way to make it work. How does that work for a one truck guy that just is working on a job by job basis for a broker or with a shipper? I guess he quotes on an hourly basis. People do that now, actually, in some cases, particularly local work. But yeah, I mean, I think I suspect that there is a support for that out there. Would you say, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. In the ELD crash piece that I did late last year, that was something that I think FMCSA was just getting started on their compensation study at that point. So that's something
Right.
that Robin Hutchinson did bring up in our conversation. Just kind of vaguely asking if a move from mileage pay to hourly pay was something that we're hearing from from our readers and people we talk to. And in fact, with that story, I did talk to a couple of guys that um, felt that ELDs weren't the problem in and of themselves. It was more,
Yeah.
guys they're paid by the mile, so they're trying to bust it harder than they should to get on down the road.
Yeah, and Karen Levy notes this in her book too. Like the problem with paper logbooks is not that drivers can abuse them and massage their time. The problem is that the industry is structured such that they have to do that or feel compelled to do that, right? And it's the structures that never seem to change. Like, as you guys probably know, the trucking industry is very conservative in a way, and I don't mean like politically, although that's also somewhat true. But like, it just doesn't. It's resistant to
Yeah,
change.
change is hard, right? Like, and
Yeah.
nobody really wants to change. People get in their routines to get comfortable with what they're doing, and they just want to stay there, which is, I don't know, in a lot of ways, it's human nature, right? But yeah, I mean, totally agreed there. I mean, I think we're all like that in a lot of respects, right? I do think that there is a lot of attention coming to the sort of pay structures now that the FMCSA's got the who's it, the Transportation Research Board
Yeah, that's right.
working on that conversation study, Matt. Yeah. I mean, it's going to continue the focus on it, and we'll see where it goes. I wonder if I kind of doubt that an hourly structure could be mandated for all of trucking, but overtime pay definitely can. And hours can be regular, and hours are regulated already, and you can track overtime hours. And so, overtime hours are overtime hours, and they're paid on an hourly basis. So, I mean, that would be one way that this would happen more often. I mean, I do come across those examples of owner operators who sort of treat their time that way, and they think about their rates that way. And focusing on time with regard to rates is always a good idea, and it's something we've written about quite a number of different times, because it basically it makes you kind of do the calculation of do the estimation of how much time you're spending on a load, rather than just looking at the rate per mile. And anyway,
The fixation on rate per mile seems to be fairly pervasive.
it is, and it's just like an easy shorthand for everybody. That's how everybody thinks about things, and we do over and over again. We've tried to come up with ways to emphasize that you should really be thinking about this on a time basis. And even to one point, like it's like how do you build detention, right? Like if you're an independent owner operator, like what's the rate there? Like what is an hour worth to you? Like what's the opportunity cost of an hour's worth of work lost? And back when we did this is probably 2015 or 16, the first time. We may have updated it a little bit, but I don't know. We came to like a ballpark, it's just average, I mean, we kind of broke down how we came to the conclusion, but I think it was like 70, $80 an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere around 75.
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark, but it's at least that today, if not 100. And I know some small fleets do build detention at $100 an hour, so it's that's an expensive proposition for a shipper. And if more people could be held to fire, we'd have much have their feet held to the fire with a rate like that. We'd have much less of a detention problem, probably.
Yeah, I'm having a gentleman come on the show here soon because, and both of you guys will sort of understand this. Truckers typically all talk to each other, and then people in the trucking media all talk to each other, and it's there's other pieces to this supply chain, right? There's other pieces to the puzzle, like the guys on the dock, the people that manage the guys on the dock, the companies that own the dock. Where are they at with all this? And I'm having in another week or two a gentleman who's worked as a distribution center manager, a warehouse manager, somebody from that side of the industry. I finally convinced one of them of the merits of speaking with me. So hopefully we'll find some things there. Well, while I've got you here, one more thing before we go. I know we're looking at an hour.
Oh yeah.
You'll notice my hat. There's a fella on Twitter named Reed Loustalot. I met him at Matt's. He has this product called Lost Freight, and he started this Discord thing, and he's trying to get lots of freight people talking to each other, trying to make the industry better. He's really, he's really hustling to try and, improve the freight brokerage and, the sort of people that like add things in the sort of value chain in that part of the industry. And one of the things he sort of, likes to talk about and other people in his Discord is about the truckers and their sort of, fixations in some quarters at the moment on blaming brokers for things. And we do have this issue with double brokering. And, there's been some calls for broker transparency, and
right.
They sort of feel like maybe owner operators are blaming them a little bit too much for other problems in the industry. I don't know. Did you guys have a sense coming from Overdrive about how your readership feels about the sort of brokeraging part of the business?
Well, I mean, it's like it's all across the map, really. But there's a definite love hate for a lot of folks when it comes to working with brokers. But there is also the very fact that a lot of our readers totally rely on a couple of brokers that are like their best partners in the whole mix for the very existence of their business, right? So, but there's just there's a lot of folks that are really just have it in their head that like a broker should not really exist, and like this small fleet owners I'm thinking about that I've talked to in the past, that if you really want to do trucking right, you get the customer, you deal with them directly, and you move the freight, and that's all there is to it. There's no need for this middleman. But in reality, brokers exist for a reason, and there's a lot of truck owners out there that want to take a little bit of a greater hold of their business and run independent with authority, but there's only so much you can do to really get customers on both ends or of a particular lane that you're running, or like in other areas where you may go once or twice. So the broker exists to match that person with another customer, somebody that he works with. But it's I don't know. There is all the things that you mentioned there, the transparency fight. I think there's that could be beneficial to I know there's a lot of owner operators that would really love for all commissions and margins or commissions on any what the shipper actually pays for the load, how much the broker took out to be disclosed afterward. They would love that information, because it'll help them say, okay, is this guy really worth that? Otherwise, how do they know? It's just how do they make that determination? If it's somebody that they will use only once, they don't have a maybe they want to use them again, maybe they don't. But if they don't know if they're being treated fairly, then they don't have any of the information to make that decision.
Yeah.
And anyways, it's just like the brokers. It's all across the map. What would you say, man? Put it in a little, maybe fewer words than I.
I've heard a lot of the same thing. I think, there's a lot of sense out there. I just got done writing a package of stories about, first part was, working with brokers and building those relationships. And then what I just finished was, trying to find direct shipper customers. And there's definitely a sense that there's a misunderstanding among trucking companies, owner operators, of how brokers do their job, how they get their freight, and things like that. And I've tried to address that from both sides, try to kind of bridge that gap and help both sides understand each other, because at the end of the day, both sides are trying to get the freight to its destination to make everybody happy. But the transparency thing, there's already a regulation on the books for it. It may just be as simple as enforcing that regulation. I don't know that there would be a need for anything extra, but I know that
OIDA wants
petition is
to automatically disclose that information at the end of every transaction. And will we get there? I mean, there seems to be some appetite for something in that regard from the feds, but we don't know where we're going to get yet, but we'll see. I will say the stuff that Matt's talking about there, the work that he's done this year, and including right now, like just posted yesterday, some of it is definitely worth folks checking out, including any brokers in the audience and or carriers, no doubt, and drivers. It's I think you'll find if you go to the we're recording this on what is it, Tuesday, Gord? Tuesday the 15th, and it should be still on the front page of the site at overdriveonline.com if you go there. And in terms of the state of surveillance package that we put together, that's pretty easy to find. I think we called it truck. If you search like trucking's state of surveillance on Google, it'll probably come up.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I'll include links every time I
Yeah.
post a show. I put all the information with it so everybody can look everything
Yeah,
up.
sure. Yep.
So,
Definitely.
and while we're here, one of our alumnus from Overdrive, Mr. Long Haul Paul, wanted to give him a shout out. He
Oh
he
yeah. Yep.
he usually calls me a couple times a week, but he must be busy. I haven't heard from him in a little while. Hope he's all right.
Well, that surveillance package, I should have said this early on. In fact, like the first, okay, so I had heard about Karen Levy's book, but Paul wrote me and said, "Hey, maybe I should interview this woman and just get to her story about this book." It seems like it's right up our alley, and she's telling a story that we've told before. I think in some ways. She's of course much smarter than us, she's academic, but he first proposed doing that, and so and from there, the team over here with Alex and Matt, we took it a little farther and built out the reporting around it. But Paul did do that interview, and it turned out really well.
He did, yes. I listened to it.
Yeah,
He even name dropped me.
yeah, you were in there. That's right.
Yeah, I have in fact met Karen Levy in person. We only live about 8 miles apart from each other. When I was first alerted to her book and her work, I had no idea. I'd never even heard of her. She'd never heard of me.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, your project and mine are kind of simpatico. Although I'm the studied object, and you are the professor. So I went and met her last year. We had a couple beers, talked about her book. She is extremely intelligent, and just as Paul said, she is a very smart lady and lovely person to hang out with. And I highly suggest if you ever get the opportunity to have a beer with her, you should.
I've only sat on a Zoom meeting with her. I was sort of also in that conversation that Paul had with her, but that's the only time I've really interacted with her in any kind of semi in-person way, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll meet her sometime one of these days.
All right, well, gentlemen, it's been an hour. Thank you very much for your time, for all the wonderful reporting, especially Mr. Cole. I really enjoy all of your work. I read just about everything you put out. It's fantastic. Where can anybody find you guys outside of Overdrive Online if people want to chase you around the internet?
Well, I'm on all the social platforms, though I am not very good at using them, or not very frequent at using them as I used to be. Not nearly as frequent. But that's easy to find. It's Todd Dills, Dills.
Yeah, same with Todd. I'm not very active on social media, but I think my Twitter account is Matt Cole RR. I guess it's X account now. Matt Cole RR. Or by email, mattcole@randallriley.com.
Yeah, and I'm just tdills@randallriley.com. That's easy to email me there. And if you go searching my name, you might find a couple of books of fiction. But if it happens that you find your way to one of those, don't hold my rudimentary fiction writing skills against me.
All right. Well, again,
I'm a journalist.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much, guys. Happy trails and way of the road.